In this video, I will demonstrate how to run several different types of regression analyses. The first type will just be a simple linear regression. Then we're going to review multiple regression, and we'll wrap up by looking at a hierarchical linear regression. So let's start with simple linear regression because, as the name suggests, it's the most simple and basic type of regression analysis. You would use this type of analysis simply to determine how well scores on some x variable predict scores on some y variable. In this data set, we recruited participants who identified as people of color, and we were interested in understanding what factors might contribute to stigma towards seeking psychological help. So, two things that we looked at were commitment to ethnic identity and intergroup forgiveness. So let's see how well scores on something like commitment to ethnic identity can predict scores on stigma towards seeking psychological help. Now, to do this in SPSS, you simply go up to Analyze, Regression, and then Linear. So because we want to predict scores on stigma towards seeking psychological help, we're going to pull that over to the dependent variable box. And then we'll put commitment to ethnic identity in our independent variable box. That's really all you need to do. Let's go ahead and click OK and see what we get. Okay, so we have several different tables here from SPSS. The first one here just tells us the variables that we put into the model. So it was just commitment to ethnic identity with our dependent variable, which was stigma. The second table is your model summary. And what this does is it tells us, you can look at the R-squared value, and that will tell you how much of the variance in your outcome variable your predictor is able to tell you. So moving the decimal over 2 places, you see that our model is predicting about 4.3% of the variance in commitment to ethnic identity. In stigma towards seeking psychological help. Our predictor was commitment to ethnic identity. So again, commitment to ethnic identity is predicting 4.3% of the variance in stigma towards seeking psychological help. But this table doesn't tell us if that amount of variance is significant or not. To figure that out, we can look at our ANOVA table, which gives us a p-value here under significance. And because that is less than 0.05, we do know that this is a significant result here. Then we can also look at our coefficients table. And so whether you look at the unstandardized coefficient or the standardized coefficient, both are negative. So this is telling you that there's a negative relationship between commitment to ethnic identity and stigma towards seeking help. So the more committed people are to their ethnic identity, the less stigma they have towards seeking help. And again, we see here that the test was significant. All right, but we have more than just this one variable in our study. Let's see how well another variable might do in addition to commitment to ethnic identity. So to figure that out, we can run a multiple regression. And again, we'll just go up to Analyze, Regression, and Linear. What we have before is already here. Again, we have our dependent variable, which is stigma, our independent variable, which is commitment to ethnic identity. But let's also see if intergroup forgiveness might be helpful in predicting our outcome variable. So we just brought that over, and now we'll click OK. Results here look pretty similar as to our results before. So again, you just have a summary of the different variables we put into our model. Now we see under model summary that we have an R-squared value of 0.135. So that means that when you consider both of these variables together, intergroup forgiveness and commitment to ethnic identity, that's explaining about 13.5% of the variance in stigma towards seeking psychological help. So let's look at the ANOVA table to get our p-value. That is definitely less than 0.05. So again, this model is significant. And if we're interested in sort of knowing how strongly each individual variable is related to the outcome, we can look at our coefficients table again. And we see that for both of the variables, there's a negative relationship. And we also see that both variables are significant, right? So having a stronger commitment to ethnic identity and having higher levels of intergroup forgiveness because they're negative, this is negatively related to stigma towards seeking help. So the stronger these variables are, the less people experience that stigma. Okay, but suppose we're interested in knowing how much more variance in our model intergroup forgiveness might predict above and beyond something like commitment to ethnic identity. Well, we can run another test, which is a hierarchical linear regression, to answer that type of question. Okay, because again, under model summary here, we just have this single r-squared value. We don't have a good picture of how much each of these variables is contributing to the outcomes. So let's go once more to analyze, regression, and linear. Notice here that you have block 1 of 1. So you can actually add in different blocks or different levels, which allow you to sort of break down your predictor variables and look at them either in groups or to look at them independently. Again, just depending on what you're interested in and how many variables you have. Let's take intergroup forgiveness out and leave commitment to ethnic identity just in our block 1, in our what we call our first step. And then click the next button. See, now we have block 2 of 2, and this is empty. Let's pull intergroup forgiveness back over by itself. So again, it's splitting these two up. Okay, we will leave method as enter. And we also want to go up here to statistics and request the r-square change. So this will allow us to see how much variance in the outcome intergroup forgiveness predicts above and beyond the variance already explained by commitment to ethnic identity. So just hit continue and then OK. Again, we have a summary of the variables we put in, but now you can see that these have been broken down into steps 1 and steps 2. If we go to the model summary, we have some extra information over here, which is the r-square change that we just requested. What this is telling us is that in step 1, so when we just had commitment to ethnic identity, that explained 4.8% of the variance in our outcome, so in stigma towards seeking help. And then when we added in intergroup forgiveness, that told us an additional 8.7% of the variance in stigma toward seeking help. And here, if we look under our significance numbers, they're both less than 0.05, so again, both significant predictors. You see that also here in the ANOVA table. And like before, we can look at the coefficients table and look at our coefficients to get an idea of the direction and of the strength. And also see that both were significant. So again, just to summarize, you can do a simple regression just to look at how well X variable predicts changes in Y variable. You can do a multiple regression to look at how well several X variables predict changes in Y variables. And then you can do a hierarchical multiple regression if you want to parse those out a bit and determine how well one variable predicts changes in an outcome variable, sort of above and beyond controlling for other variables.